friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another cozy wrap-up. I am so excited to be doing this for another month. As you guys know, for my wrap-ups I will sit down in some pajamas with something nice and warm to drink and talk over all the books that I read in the month of whatever we're talking about. Today it happens to be the month of March. I busted out my Captain mug because I haven't seen him in a while, and cheers. And we're going to talk over stats, we're going to talk over the books that I've read, and we're going to get all in the feels. And we're gonna love it, I hope at least. Let me just make a disclaimer. We are not, however, going to talk about this situation back here. Yes, my shelves are now double stacked because I've run out of room. Do I want to talk about it? Absolutely not. So let's pretend like you don't see it, okay? Great. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some reading stats. As you guys know, reading stats are my favorite things to do. I love to see the numbers each month, and I will say that this month was a fantastic reading month for me, so no complaining here whatsoever. So let's start with the amount of books that I read this month, and I read 17 books, 17 whopping books in the month of March. Fantastic reading month and pretty much overall good ratings. 16 of those books I read mixed media, meaning I read the physical book or the ebook alongside the audiobook. It's my favorite way of reading books, as you guys know, and so it comes to no surprise to me that 16 out of the 17 were mixed media, and I read one book physically. Out of those 17 books, it came out to 6,664 pages for the month, which is an average of about 214 pages a day, and an average book length of 392 pages. The number that always astonishes me each month is the number of audiobook hours I listen to, and this month I read a total of 186 hours of audiobook listening, so every time it just blows my mind. As for my star ratings, I gave out 4 5 stars, 9 4 stars, 4 3 stars, no 2 stars, and no 1 stars. And then for my genre breakdown, I read 8 fantasies, 5 romances, 3 contemporaries, and 1 nonfiction. And then for my age breakdown, I read 7 adult books, 2 new adult books, 7 young adult books, and 1 middle grade book. As for the representation in the books this month, I read 5 books with mental health rep, 1 book with disability rep, and 1 book with illness rep, which means that 11 of the books that I read this month had no representation in them at all. As for my POC authors, I read 4 books by POC authors, which means that 13 of the books that I read were not written by a POC author. However, I read 7 books this month with POC characters, which means that 10 of my books didn't have POC characters represented. One that I was really surprised by this month was my LGBTQI+ rep. I only read 2 books with LGBTQIA+ rep in it this month, which means that 15 of the books that I read this month had no LGBTQI+, which is usually pretty unusual for me. I tend to read at least 5 books with LGBTQ+ rep, so that was quite astonishing, but I will definitely make a change for this month. And then as for the 2 books, 1 book had a character that was bisexual and 1 book had a character that was gay. Both of them were side characters. I read 15 books written by women and 2 books written by men. 9 of the books that I read this month were the start or a part of a series. 8 books were standalones. And out of those series, I was able to finish 1 this month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you are a chronic series starter and a chronic non-series continuer, 1 is good. I read 15 of the books for the first time this month, and 2 of them were rereads. As for my publication years, I read 4 books published in 2020, 5 books published in 2018, 2 books published in 2017, 2 books published in 2016, 1 book published in 2015, 2 books published in 2012, and 1 book published in 1997, which happens to be the year that I was born, so go me. And then as for my color breakdowns, which is one of my favorite stats to do, I read 5 blue books, 4 white books, 3 green books, 2 black books, 2 red books, and 1 purple book. And then I think that I forgot this in my what month was before this? February wrap up, but I forgot to tell you guys what my favorite book of the month was. I won't bore you guys with the details of that since it doesn't pertain to this particular wrap up. My favorite book for the month, this month, was Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, which I will talk about in a little bit, but I really enjoyed it and I will definitely share my thoughts as to why in just a second. But now, all stats aside, let's go ahead and talk about the actual books. Okay, the first book that I'm going to talk about, I'm really just going to breeze over it because I did talk about this series as a whole in length in my February wrap up, and that is the last book in the Crossfire series by Sylvia Day, which is One With You. And I gave this book a 4-star. It was the conclusion of the series and I loved it so freaking much. I love the series so much. I loved the characters, I loved the storyline, the plot line, the amount of representation in this book, but just also the amount of heavy topics that were broached in the series, and some of them weren't handled the best, but some of them were really handled really well. And to see these characters grow and change and become better versions of themselves over the 5 books was absolutely wonderful to watch and see, and I loved it so much. I cannot wait to give the series a reread. I do own all of the audiobooks, so I will definitely pick these back up again when I'm feeling down or just need a good pick-me-up, because the series just brought me so much joy, and I'm just so glad that I read it. I'm so glad that I finished it. I did talk about this book in my February wrap-up, but I figured that since I did technically finish it in March, that I would share it with you guys here, but I'm not going to talk about it too much. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the series, feel free to check out that wrap-up. I will leave it in the cards above. Alright, the next book that I'm going to talk about is actually one that I don't own. I picked this one up from the library, and that is A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahereh Mafi. I really enjoyed this book. I think that it was a very interesting YA contemporary that really shone a lot of light on how Pakistani individuals that live in America are treated, and especially after 9/11, how much hate and racism and aggression is put in their path, and how much they have to overcome in order to live a peaceful and harmonious lifestyle. And I just thought it was very well done, especially for a YA read. The topics were broached in a very well and understandable and approachable way, but also talked about some really important things. Microaggressions were talked about. Racism, of course, was broached in a really interesting way, and I really like the topic of the reasons why women wear hijabs, and the meaning behind it can mean something different for each woman that decides to wear the headpiece, or how closely that is tied to their religion. And that's talked about so well in this book. I really enjoyed that. This is also a romance, so there is some romantic aspects to this. However, it did feature one of my least favorite plot devices. I can't really call it a trope, but it did include one of my least favorite plot devices, and that is when you're in a relationship and the reason that the big blow up at the end of a relationship comes about is because the person that you're with, their parent has told you that you need to exit the relationship and you can't be together anymore. And that is my least favorite plot device in a romance. I think that it is so overdone, and it's just very demeaning, because once you get to the end of the book, every time they make up and have a happily ever after, and it's just there's so many ways around that situation in most of those experiences that just doesn't seem very logical, in my opinion. So other than that, I really enjoyed it. I think that the topics that were talked about in this book are the most important part of this book, 100%. I also love that there was some representation here for breakdancing, which I have never seen in a book before, and I thought that that was a wonderful thing to add, because it is definitely something that I struggle with in regards to some of the YA characters, is they don't have a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of hobbies. Their only hobbies are hanging out with this new person that they have fallen in love with. And I really loved that there was a little bit more depth to this character. I do not remember her name, so that is the reason why I'm not calling her by her name. I don't have the book to look it up with me. So anyways, I really enjoyed this book. I think that it was really well done. I loved the characters. I did give it a 4-star. I don't think that it was the best book, because I don't think that I connected to the characters in and of themselves as much as I could have. I didn't connect with the experience because I've never experienced that, and I don't really understand what it's like to go through those type of situations. But I don't think I really told you what the plot of this book is, but basically the main character is living in a very racial oriented town, and she's dealing with a lot of the blowback from 9/11 and the hardships that she's facing going to school in a mostly white community with people that don't understand her or her upbringing or her lifestyle. And so she ends up in a relationship with a very popular individual at the school, and I don't want to spoil the reason why he's popular because it's a very big plot point of the book, but they end up in a very interesting relationship, and the main character, the male main character, is faced with a lot of backlash on his end because he's dating this very hated person of the community, and their relationship ends up with a lot of hardship because they really don't know how to trudge through some of the terrible things that have been thrown their way. And also the female character really didn't want a relationship to begin with because she knew the downsides of having a very public relationship with a person that is not of the same race and religious background and ethnic background as her. So it was a very interesting book. It was very well done. I really enjoyed it, and I read that mainly because I'm gearing up for the new release of Tahara Mafi's new book, which I'm really excited for. I will put a picture up on the screen because I don't remember the name of it at the moment, but I'm really looking forward to that one, and I really enjoyed this book. So if that's any consolation to how her second book is going to be, I'm looking forward to it. Wow, I really spent all the time talking about one book. Let's move on. The next book that I have here is Running Wild by Linda Howard and Linda Jones. I picked this up because this has been sitting on my shelf with 20 pages to go until the end of the book for 9 months. 9 months. It has been sitting on my shelf. I literally had 20 pages to go, and I found the audiobook through my library when I was cataloging all of the books that are available through my library. I was making a list, and I saw that this one was one of them, and it was available, so I just hunkered down, read the last 20 pages, and finished the damn book because what the hell? Why didn't I finish it before? But anyways, I gave this book a 3-star. I don't think that this is the best romance book that I've ever read. I picked this up 9 months ago to do a smutty video with it, and I ended up swapping that out for something else, and I just never got back to it. I don't know why I even ever picked this up. It wasn't that good, but it follows a girl named Carlin who is on the run from her ex-boyfriend, who is basically this huge stalker. He really is obsessed with her and will stop at nothing. Like, literally, there's no lengths that he won't go to make her pay for the humiliation that she has put him through, in his eyes at least. And she ends up in this very small cowboy town, and she ends up becoming a cook for this cowboy named Zeke and his crew, and there is a relationship that blossoms between Carlin and Zeke. However, at the very start of the book, Zeke knows Carlin's situation and that she's using a fake name and that she's on the run and she's super cautious. And so Carlin never expects to stay in this relationship. She never expects to stay in this town more than a season because she is constantly on the move. But when she starts to put down roots with Zeke, things become a lot more complicated and her past ends up catching up with her. And it was a really interesting read when I was reading it, but it obviously didn't stick with me enough to want to pick up the last 20 pages and figure out what happens in the end. And it just wasn't my favorite book I've ever read. So it was good. I liked the romance. The steamy scenes were great. Overall, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're looking for a cowboy romance that has that background. But if that's what you're looking for, here you go. If not, avoid it. The next book that I'm going to talk about is my middle grade book that I read this month, and that is Amal Unbound. This is by Aisha Saeed, and this follows, oh man, I forgot all the names this month. This follows, Amal is literally on the front of the book. My lord. This follows Amal, who is a 12-year-old girl living in, I believe, Pakistan. Yes, in a small Pakistani village where her biggest dream in life is to become a teacher, and her dreams really get crushed when she's walking through town one day and she insults the man who basically runs this town, and she insults him by yelling at him in the middle of a huge crowd. And in order to pay back for the humiliation that she put him through, she becomes one of his servants at the house or mansion that they live in, and she's taken away from her family and her friends to serve this tyrant leader, and it's her story of trying to get back to her family and learning to fight even when so many hardships are against her and when the odds are stacked against her and there are so many risks involved. And it was a really cute middle grade story. I ended up giving this a 4-star. I thought that it was really well done. I think that this is a perfect book for young kids that are, in this age group to read, to really understand that, especially if you're living in a country such as our own where we have so much privilege, that to really understand that people don't always experience the privilege and the abilities and the opportunities that we have in our lifestyles today. And I think that was a really wonderful thing to read, to be able to experience somebody else's experience and to understand that life isn't always easy for everyone else in the world like it is here for us. Now, I'm not discrediting the things that we go through in the United States, but it's nothing compared to what these people are going through on a daily basis and the inabilities that they have to, perform certain menial things in life, that they have to rely on other people that have more power and money above them to make that happen. And it was just a very beautiful, well done book. It talked a lot about Amal's dreams and how much she was willing to sacrifice to make sure that her family was safe and cared for. And it was just really well done. I really liked it. It was very cute. I definitely recommend this for people that like middle grade and want to read a middle grade story. It was very well done, and I will definitely be passing this one on so that I can get this into the hands of kids that will benefit from it the most. But I did really enjoy it. All right, I read another ebook, and I read Rapsodic by, I don't remember the author of the name of the author on this book, but I will put it up on the screen, of course. And this is a book that I actually buddy read with Sharon. It is a fantasy romance, and this follows, I cannot think of her name. Callie. I think her name is Callie. And she ends up in a very precarious situation right at the beginning of the book, and she pleads for a deal from the bargainer. The bargainer is this very well-known staple in society that is known for giving people deals, but he always comes back to repay, and when he comes back to repay, it's never something that you want to do. But he has a certain type of magic that forces people to do what he says no matter what, and Callie is also a siren, and so this is a very urban fantasy type world. There's a lot of different mythical creatures going on in here. But for several years after the first deal that she makes with the bargainer, she continues to make deal after deal after deal to spend time with him and to create a relationship with him. And then he up and leaves out of nowhere, and for 7 years she hears nothing from him. And then after 7 years he's coming back to collect on those debts, and Callie has no reason to understand why he is back. And it's the story of their relationship unfolding, but also there's an underlying plot that something in the fairy world, it's basically like a portal world outside of the normal world, something very dangerous and sinister is going on in the background. And so there's that plot. I don't want to divulge too much because I think this book is really best understood when you read it without knowing too much, going in quite blind. But I really enjoyed this. I was hooked from page one, and we literally read this in 2 days, and if it wasn't for the fact that we were buddy reading, I probably would have finished it day one. It was so easy to get sucked into, and I loved the character dynamics between the two characters, because it basically was a hate to love, because she spent so much time, the 7 years, resenting the bargainer for leaving her, that they don't have the best relationship. But to watch their relationship grow and to see the reasons behind the decisions that they both made was very satisfying. However, I will say that the ending of this book wasn't my favorite. I ended up giving a 4-star due to the fact that the ending wasn't my favorite. I think that some of the plot devices that were used changed the dynamic of the book too much, and I'm not excited for the dynamic moving forward. I do really want to read the second book in the series, just because the first book was so gripping and so much fun. But the dynamic that has changed has made me a little wary to pick up book 2. But Sharon has read book 2 and has really enjoyed it, so I'm really excited to give it a go. But I will say that the ending of the book changed my feelings about the book overall. But I will say that it was very smutty, it was very sexy, very hot, and very fun to read. I really enjoyed it, and if you're looking for a really fun fantasy romance, I definitely recommend it. I'm trying to get a little bit more detailed with my reviews and my synopsis because I don't do dedicated reviews, so if this is too long-winded and you guys don't like how detailed I'm getting, please let me know, and I will go back to just doing some more simple thoughts on the books that I'm reading, but feel free to let me know. But the next book that I read is actually the first book that I finished for the Spring Into Reading-a-thon, which is House of Lights by Jamin Eve. I read this for a prompt of reading a book with green on the cover, and this is my reread of the series, so I won't talk too much about this, seeing as it is the third book of the series, but I ended up giving this book a 4-star. I really enjoy the series as a whole. I've talked about it quite a few times now in this year, because I've read 2 of the 4 books in the series this year, and I've just really enjoyed them. This reread has been so much fun. It's very gripping, and it's just kind of nostalgic for me because I was reading these books well before I was getting back into reading, and so picking them back up again just gives me a really happy and light and fun feeling. So I really enjoyed them. This series follows 4 girls who are secret keepers and hold a secret to this paranormal world and have a little bit more of a connection to each other than is originally led on, but it is basically just 4 fated mate stories that follow 4 different girls that are fated mates to the 4 rulers of the 4 different houses of this paranormal world. I'm trying to keep it vague in case you do want to read it. It's best to learn about this world and what these paranormal beings are as you read the series, but I really enjoyed this series so much and I cannot wait to continue. Alright, the next book that we're going to talk about is my nonfiction book of the month, which was Tuesdays with Maury, and I really enjoyed this. This is a nonfiction about a man named Mitch Albom. It's nonfiction about his life, and he has a really good relationship with his college professor when he's in college, and as he graduates and time slips away, their relationship starts to, change and move as, time goes on and things get in the way, and they didn't spend as much time together. But after years and years of speaking, he finds out that Maury, who is his professor, ends up being diagnosed with ALS. ALS. Okay, I said that wrong in my vlog last time, and it's not ASL, it's ALS, which is a degenerative disease that affects the mobility of a person's body. And Maury knows that he's going to die, and he's going to die very slowly. And so every Tuesday, Mitch will come over and hear life lessons and learn about Maury's life and his death from the man himself who was dying. And it was just a really powerful read about a lot of different things about love, life, marriage, death, morality, and just coming to terms with your life as your life is coming to an end. And it was really beautiful, very well done. I don't know if I will ever reread this again. I think that it was a book that I enjoyed in the moment and enjoyed reading, but it's not a book that I see myself rereading again. But I will definitely recommend it if anyone is looking for a good nonfiction, a short read that has a lot of pack and punch. Definitely a good one. I did give this book a 4-star. I really enjoyed it, but again, not something I will keep on my shelves. All right, up next, we have my book club pick for the month of March, which was City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. And I gave this book a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. However, I will say that the first half of the book, the first 200 pages, really took me for a ride, and I was struggling hardcore. I was on the struggle bus for quite some time. And I think that it was just due to the fact that this is told in dual perspectives between the character who is the main female character who the book mainly follows, which her name is Shazi, and she is Shazi? No, that's not Nari. I don't know where I got Shazi from. Nari, and she is basically a big con artist. She has the power and the ability to heal people and see when people are sick or have cancer or things like that. Things that have to do with the health and mental health of a human being. And so she performs cons, and that's how she makes her money, until one day during a con she ends up summoning a jinn, and that jinn ends up leading her into a world that she never ever experienced, and they end up going on a journey to find the City of Brass, and it's the city of David Baugh, and it's a beautiful story with a lot of imagery and a wonderful cast of characters. But the first 200 pages were just so bogged down with political intrigue and world building that it took me a long time to get into the story. But once I was in, I was hooked, and I really enjoyed the story. I really loved Nari's and Dada's exploration of their relationship and how their relationship grew into what it was. There's also another character in here named Ali, and that is the other perspective that you follow. And their two paths really converge when they get to the city of David Baugh, because that is where Ali lives. And you find out that the two of them have a much bigger connection than they had originally let on when you start the book. And it was just a really interesting tale of watching their stories unfold and intertwine and come together in a way that I didn't expect at all. The ending of this book threw me for a loop, and I'm really excited for book 2. I can definitely see why this is on a lot of people's favorite fantasy lists, because it was very well done. The writing style in here is absolutely gorgeous and stunning, and the imagery in here is just over the top amazing, and the character work is really, really well done. So I'm really excited to get more into this series. I have a hard time really summarizing and giving my thoughts on fantasies because they're just so intricate, but I did really enjoy it, and I'm really excited to get to book 2. All right, up next, we're going to talk about the one, the only, Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Everybody and their mother is reading this right now, and as you guys well know, the adaptation is coming out in April, so I decided to also pick up the first book in the series so that I am ready for the adaptation when it comes out. And I will say that I was a bit disappointed by this book. I ended up giving this book a 3-star. I think the hype was just a bit too high for me. I will say that I loved the first half of this book. I flew through it. I loved the characters. I loved the dynamic and where the story was going. And the second half of the book just bored me, and I didn't care for how the storyline progressed from the beginning to the end. I have a few favorite characters that I would prefer the storyline to follow, and it didn't do that. So I don't want to have any spoilers in this, but I think that the book itself was interesting, but it kind of lost me in the second half. I love the magic system though, and I think that Alina's powers are really interesting and really something that I would love to learn more of when I get into the books 2 and 3. But I mean, I read 6 of Crows, so I love the fact that I love this magic system. I think that it's a very interesting magic system, and I think that it's a very fun thing to go about, but I don't know, I just kind of lost me in the middle there, and I had a hard time getting back on track when it came to loving the outcome of a story. I like the Darkling. I think that he's a very interesting and fascinating character, and I really want to learn a bit more about his character as a whole, and so I'm hoping that we'll get some more of that in book 2, which I'm hoping to read soon, but it is currently sold out everywhere, so, I mean, go off. With the Netflix adaptation is giving Leigh Bardugo all of the coins, so good for her. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I will definitely continue on with the series and give the rest of the 2 books in the series a shot, because I'm thinking that the series will continue to get better as the books go on. At least that's my prediction, so I'm hoping that I'm not wrong, and I'm hoping that I enjoyed the second and third book a little bit more than the first. All right, the next book that I read was the group book for Spring Into Readathon, which was A Semi-Definitive List of Worst Nightmares by Crystal Sutherland. And this book was so freaking well done. I will go ahead and preface this by saying that there are a ton of trigger warnings in this book, so please tread lightly if you're going to read this book. It does have a ton of trigger warnings. This is a book that is based in phobias and fears, so there are a couple scenes in this book that really got to me. I know there's a couple of scenes in this book that really got to the co-hosts of Spring Into Readathon, so just tread lightly and go into this book knowing that it's not exactly what it seems. This book follows a girl named Esther whose family has been cursed to die by their worst fears, and she has decided that she is going to run away from those fears as far as she can. So she makes a list called A Semi-Definitive List of Worst Nightmares, where she writes down all of the things that could possibly be her worst fears, and she avoids them at all costs. But when she runs back into her elementary school crush, who ends up pickpocketing her and leaving her in the dust with no phone, he also ends up stealing that list from her. And after they rekindle their friendship, they decide to check off those fears one by one and help her to face her fears. And this book sounds like it's going to be a really cute contemporary, but it's actually a little bit more than that. There's some magical realism aspects to this book that really threw me for a loop, but when you get to the end, you find out that it's so worth it, and that everything that happened in this book makes complete and total sense, and I loved every minute of it, honestly. I was a bit surprised by the writing style, which I think bogged down the story a bit for me, but once I got into it, I was into it, and I loved it so much. I ended up giving this book a 4-star because the beginning took me a little while to wrap my head around, and the magical realism aspects were a bit different for me, but I did really enjoy this book. But like I said, there are a lot of trigger warnings in this, so we're talking about mental illness, attempted suicide, depression, anxiety, obviously phobias, so mental health is talked about in this book really well. And then you also have the talk about death and morality, so if that is something that is triggering to you, I would definitely keep that in mind, but I did really enjoy it. And the wholesome, beautiful romance of these 2 characters was just so much fun to watch, like, come into fruition and see it become what it was. And it was just so well done. The main characters and the side characters in this book were written in absolutely amazingly. There's also some representation in this book for ASL, sign language. So that was amazing to see, and definitely not something that you see in the book sphere that much at all. So it was really beautiful to watch that all come to light, and just to see how much struggle these characters go through, but the light at the end of the tunnel at the end. It was just so beautiful. Oh, a main trigger in here that I definitely forgot to mention is child abuse, so please just heed all the trigger warnings when you go into this and keep that in mind. But it was a beautiful book, so well done, and I'm absolutely so glad that I read it. All right, as much as I would love to spend an hour talking about this book, I'm going to breeze past it because you guys already know my feelings about it. And I reread House of Breath and Blood, Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas this month, and of course I gave it a 5-star. I loved it so much. I cried, I laughed, I did all of the emotions in the world possible for this book, and loved it just as much, if not more, the second time around than the first. I'm so happy that I reread it. I will probably reread it one more time this year, hopefully, crossing our fingers when the second book comes out. But I loved it. I loved it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because this video was already getting so long, but it was so freaking good, and I cannot wait to do a reread, and I cannot wait for book number 2. All right, we're moving on to another romance, smutty romance, and that is Dear Ava. Again, don't remember the author on this, but I will go ahead and put it up on the screen. This was a romance that took a bit of a darker topic and turned it into this really beautiful romance. This follows a girl named Not a Clue, can't remember her name, but the male character's name is Knox, and she has been through a very horrific and tragic rape in her past, and she knows that one of the people that did it is on the high school football team, and she is very shunned in this community and very looked down upon, and everyone hates her, and she's really the pariah of this town and this school. But she comes back for her senior year to get revenge and find the person that assaulted her, and really get justice and vengeance. And she ends up in a very interesting relationship with the football captain, the quarterback. And seeing as the person that she believed raped her is on the football team, everyone on the team hates her, including the captain at times. But you can tell that they have a very instant attraction to each other, and I read this specifically because it was recommended by Chandler and Ainsley as a mutual pining relationship, and it was just so well done. I loved the relationship together. I loved their chemistry. I loved the hate to love aspects of this, but how much they really understood that they both had feelings for each other and didn't know how to express it, especially with everything going on. There's definitely some like mystery aspects to this, because you also are trying to figure out who assaulted the main character a year before, and there's a lot of suspicion going around and a lot of questions, but it also gave a lot of depth to the story, which I really enjoyed. I liked the characters, I liked the chemistry, I liked the smutty scenes. It was very cute. I really enjoyed it. I think that it was a really wonderful romance read if you're looking for a smutty new adult type of book, because it's technically set in high school, but I think that the sex scenes and the topic of the book felt a little bit more new adult to me. So if you're looking for a good mutual pining new adult romance, I would definitely recommend this. It was really well done, and I'm really excited to read more by the author. I gotta figure out who the author is, but I did really like their writing, and it was just a really fun read overall, so I'm really glad that I read it. And I don't know if I mentioned, but I gave it a 5-star. It was really well done. All right, we have another book that was unfortunately a disappointment for me this month, and that was Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This is the second book in the Arc of the Size series, and I just really expected more, unfortunately. I gave this book a 3-star, which is a stark difference because I gave the first book a 5-star. And I think that the academic setting that the first book took, and the learning of the world and the scythedom and everything that came with that was just so much fun to experience and live through. But the second book was just not what I was expecting. We followed a lot of different perspectives. It was kind of confusing. And I think that the plot was just not my favorite setting for what I wanted this book to be. And that's pretty unfortunate, but I did enjoy the characters. I liked the original 2 characters, Citron and Rowan, and the parts that they played in this book. But you also had a couple of other characters that played a huge part in the actual storyline, and their perspectives took over a lot of the book that I just didn't care about. So I think that's the main basis of what I didn't love about this book, is I just didn't like where the storyline went. However, the ending of this book made me so intrigued for book 3 that I absolutely have to read it. But I'm hoping that book 3 is better than book 2, because I was just sorely disappointed. I don't know if I'm in the minority here of people that didn't like the second book as much as the first. I could definitely be. I just think that my expectations were too high, and my expectations for the plot was way different than what I got. So unfortunately, I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but I am excited for book 3, and hopefully I enjoy it more than book 2. All right, I promise we're getting close to the end. The next book that we have here is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. And again, this is a book that didn't blow me away. I ended up giving this book a 3-star. I thought that it was a very interesting book and a very interesting magic system. However, I didn't absolutely love this. So in this book, you are following Amora, who is next in the throne for her kingdom, and she has the power of soul magic. So she's able to read people's souls, but also to torture them and kill them using their blood and bones. And on the day of her initiation ceremony, things go awry, and she is now on the run for her life, but also on a mission to save her kingdom and claim her rightful heir to the throne. But during that, she ends up teaming up with a very interesting pirate, some interesting side characters, as well as a mermaid. And I really enjoyed the side character story. I love the mermaid, but we didn't get a lot of page time with the mermaid, unfortunately. And I just felt like overall, when I was reading the story, I was just meh about most of it. The fight scenes were really breezed over and were very hard to follow. I did, though, and really enjoy the writing style. I thought that it was very pretty and well done, but I just didn't love the story. I didn't love the characters. I didn't love the relationship. I didn't have an extreme attachment to any of their dynamics. And it was supposed to be this really cute, like, found family situation that I just didn't have a ton of connection to. So I definitely will read book 2 because the ending of book 1 made me quite curious to read it, and I do own it, so I might as well just finish out the duology. But it just wasn't my favorite book of all time, and I don't see myself falling in love with it. So there's that. I just realized that I skipped a book and I forgot to talk about my favorite book of the month, and that was Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I gave this book a 5-star. This book is definitely very interesting. If you haven't already heard the synopsis of this, it's a very taboo romance relationship. This follows, man, I'm shit with names today. I cannot remember her name for the life of me, but she is dating Cole, and after a turn of events, they end up staying at Cole's father's house, and this relationship follows the main female character and the romance between not Cole, but Cole's dad. So not only do we have a taboo relationship in that aspect, but there's also a huge age gap. She's 19, he's in his late 30s, and you have a lot of dynamics in play here because you have their mutual pining, you have the intense sexual attraction to each other, but they're also trying to figure out how to properly and compassionately explore the relationship without hurting the people around them. And I really enjoyed it. The sex scenes were fire. The relationship progression was just so much fun to watch, and I was enjoying the screen time of every single character or the page time of every single character equally. I loved it so much. It was so much fun to watch. There was so much intrigue about each character and their backstories and where they came from and how much effort was put into building these characters' development and their relationships throughout. Cole's dad has a really tough relationship with his son, and things are definitely very strained, and so his reluctance to start a relationship with his son's ex-girlfriend is definitely a hard one. It's very strange, and it was just so interesting to watch the dynamic of them two trying to figure out this attraction that they have to each other, but also to really understand if it's real, if it's worth taking the risk. And it was just so beautiful. I loved it. I definitely cannot wait to reread it. I will definitely be getting a physical copy at some point. It was just so much fun. I am a fan of Penelope Douglas now, and I will definitely be reading more of her work for sure because it was a very fun read. All right, up next we have The Deal, which is another smutty romance. Surprise, surprise. And this is a new adult romance between Hannah and... Man, I just finished this book and I cannot think of names. Hannah and Garrett? Maybe? Sure, we'll roll with that. Hannah and Garrett, and they have an interesting relationship because he is the captain of the hockey team, and she is very jaded and doesn't tend to love to go out in social circles due to the fact that she was assaulted years ago in her teens, and that has really shaped the person that she is today. But when she aces a midterm that was very hard to pass, basically the whole class bombed it, and now Garrett's hockey team position is now on the line because his grades are not high enough. He is like convinced that Hannah needs to tutor him, and Hannah is really against it. She does not want to do this. She does not want anything to do with Garrett Grayson, whatever the hell his name is. And so she's like, no way, I don't want to do it. But she has a huge crush on another guy at school, and so they make a deal that she will tutor him if he helps to make Cole, who happens to be the guy's last name, I forgot, it's Justin, jealous. And so that's the deal that they make. And as you guys know, with this relationship between these two characters, it's not going to go as planned. They end up sparking a really awesome friendship, and then it turns into a really awesome relationship. And it was just so much fun to watch the story come together. I gave it a 4-star. I think that it was well done. However, as I said before, it featured one of my least favorite plot lines and plot devices, and that is the whole your dad told me that I couldn't date you anymore situation, and I just didn't love that. But other than that, the sex scenes, great. The talk about rape, mental illness, struggling with those demons as you continue to grow older and have relationships, talk about super well, and I just enjoyed it overall. The main character was also a singer, and I really enjoyed that aspect. It was just a good book all around, and I really enjoyed it. Definitely will read more of Elle Kennedy's work because it was just so much fun, and I really enjoyed it. I think that there's more books in this off-campus series, so I will definitely have to read more because it was a blast. All right, finally, we've made it to the end. The very last book that I'm going to talk about in this wrap-up is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. All right, guys. All right, let's talk about this. I gave it a 4-star. Let's just preface that. I gave it a 4-star, but I didn't love this book. And I gave it a 4-star more off of the book as a whole and less on my enjoyment. I think that the plot slogged a little bit for me. I had a hard time wanting to pick this book up. I had a hard time getting through it, but I think that the writing was absolutely beautiful. I think that the character work was done really well, even though I didn't have a huge attachment to the characters. I think that the character work was done so well, and it was just so absolutely like detailed and vivid, and a lot of time and care went into making these characters who they are. I also really enjoyed that we had a female character who was a badass, and she did bad things, and she made bad choices, and she wasn't like the type of character that says, oh, like, I'm so bad, I'm so scary, I'm so fierce, but she does more telling than showing. She really did show that she, you know, has the capacity to make those decisions and make those hard calls and do the tough things in order to protect the people that she cares about. And so this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling in 1920 Shanghai, and it was really interesting retelling. I liked the Romeo and Juliet aspects, but there is a sickness that is plaguing the town, and it's causing people to rip their own throats out, and the two sides of a very opposing and very active blood feud now have to come together to figure out what's happening in their city and to save the people before there's nothing left to rule or dominate. So it was a very interesting book for sure. I liked the writing. Like I said, it was just so well done, and it made the story more enjoyable, but I didn't have a huge attachment to the plot. I didn't have a huge attachment to the characters, but I can respect what Chloe Gong did and the beauty that went into writing this book. And the second book needs to come out ASAP because the ending of this book, the cliffhanger, leaves you wanting more every second. So I gave it a 4-star. My feelings, my enjoyment is probably more of a 3, but my respect for the book and what it did, even though I didn't have an attachment to it, brought it up to a 4. It barely scraped a 4, but I got there. So that is my update. That is my thoughts on that book. I think I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't love it more, but I think that's one of those books that I will love even more upon a reread. So once the second book is close to coming out, I will give this one a reread and see how I feel about it the second time around, because I think that there was some things that I missed and lost in translation that really hindered my experience of reading this book. So that being said, that is the end of this very, 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 very long wrap up. I'm so sorry that it took forever. I was feeling very chatty this time around, but hopefully you guys still enjoyed it nonetheless. Leave a flower emoji down below to let me know that you made it to the end, because if you did, you are a trooper. I would love to know down below what you guys read this month, or if you've read any of these books and your thoughts, please do let me know. But that is the end of this video. I really, really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and of course leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!